Hello and welcome to Align and Activate Raw Talks and Universal Truths. Here we're exploring all things spiritual, manifestation, quantum healing, channeling, light language, you name it, we've got it covered. I'm Amy and I help heart-centered beings activate and connect with their light language so they can become the powerful healers and channels they know they're meant to be. And I'm joined today by the beautiful
Jenny Priestner, manifestation and mindset mentor. So I help you align and harness the power of your thoughts with your energy in order to release the past and manifest your best life.
Ooh, so exciting. I feel like each week, like we're coming more into our messaging and like what we're about. So every week you'll see it changes slightly as we come home to our authentic truths. And this podcast is all about helping you to come home to your authentic truth. So I want to just invite you, if you are receiving a lot from these podcasts, if you're resonating with this message, to like and subscribe. And today we do have a request, and it is on how the angels can help you with moving through addiction. Have I said that right, Jen?
Yep, that was the request.
Okay. So, gonna put out a disclaimer because on this podcast, we are not medical or mental health professionals. So whatever we speak about, it's entirely from our perspective. And moreover, what we talk about here is from a spiritual perspective. So what I always say is when it comes to anything of this nature, of a sensitive nature like this, please, if you've got anything going on with yourself, consult a professional because we are not professionals. This is our perspective. Okay. So, what?
Well said.
Thank you. So, what is addiction? So I'm going to start this one off then, and then I'll hand it over to you, Jen, for a moment. Okay. I'm
Yep.
going to speak as to what addiction is from a spiritual perspective. I'm going to talk about in a moment as well my personal, dealings with addiction. Okay. So addiction, okay, is the energy of chasing something outside of yourself, right? It's an energy of being disconnected from your source, okay? Because when we are fully connected to source, we don't have the need to look outside of ourselves for anything, okay? So for me personally, addiction is being in the energy of chasing. Would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I absolutely love that description that you've just said there. And then just to compile on that, I would say that my perception of it, and the thing is though, we can go and Google like what addiction means, and it'll bring you back like, medical blurb. And like we've said, we're coming from this from a spiritual, energetic point of view. So, with what I would say is it's an escapism of reality. It's not wanting to accept, see, and visualize what we've got in front of us. And it's being dissatisfied and unhappy with what we are perceiving in our life. And so we choose to escape reality within a different way. And it may start off, something quite harmless and innocent. I say harmless, but something quite innocent maybe is to just, smoking a joint with your friends when you're 15, which then may later develop into something later on. So there are I suppose there's a slider on addiction, isn't there, really, as to, severity as to, but again, it's pick your poison kind of thing, isn't it? So, but yeah, that is my perception of it from the spiritual point of view. It's escapism. And that's not to say that that's what it is for everything. Addiction can come in many forms. I think as soon as we say addiction, people necessarily first of all think of drugs, and it's not. Obviously, people get addicted to gambling, they get addicted to shopping, they get addicted to food, they get addicted to people, they get addicted to love. Kids get addicted to their devices. So it's within the body. There's lots of chemicals being released, and it's the body chasing those chemicals in whichever fashion it is. And we probably find in some ways, when people quit one thing, they find something else to turn their energy into, because again, their body is programmed to seek and reward after certain things. So whether it be, whether they were drinking, whether they were addicted to drugs. I know quite a lot of people who have quit drinking. I'm not saying they were alcoholics, but they were, substantial drinkers, and they've thrown all their energy into running. So they've replaced that dopamine rush of what they had with alcohol into running. So, which obviously is a much better thing to throw your energy into, isn't it, really? And to allow your brain to be addicted to. So yeah, that's my kind of stance on it there. I have sort of touched on some of the chemical aspects, but yeah, escapism and like the body with the chemicals.
Yeah, I love that. I love that word escapism, totally. And I feel like it's escaping from your own soul's truth and your own power. And there's this like, because we are taught, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, we are taught from birth to be externally focused, to be focused in the external, right? And that the external is where we find happiness, right? But happiness does not come from that place. It comes from within, but we're not taught that, right? We are so not taught that. And like, I feel like the majority of people, especially in Western society, if not maybe even, I'm not going to say everyone, but pretty much, right, has got an addiction, right, on some level. And the one that I'm going to probably speak to, that a lot of people that are listening are going to go, oh yeah, is going to be the addiction that we've all got to our phones, right? How many times a day do you pick up your phone? And maybe you're someone that doesn't, right? And but you look around and everybody is on their phone all the time, an external object. They're looking at this external thing. We're on social media all the time, and yes, whatever, like you're on maybe a form of social media, YouTube right now, listening to this podcast. And
Irony.
irony, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, like, and this is a big one, right? Because our phones give us a dopamine hit, the notifications give us a dopamine hit, and we're all addicted to it. Okay, use the word all lightly, but the majority of us are now, because we're always checking our phone. And you really got to look at that, because you're looking outside of yourself for something every time you pick up your phone. I do it several times a day, and I'm like, why am I picking my phone up right now? Because it's such an automatic thing to do. People are on WhatsApp all the time, they're on Facebook all the time, right? So this is probably one of the most subtle forms of addiction that we don't even recognize. A lot of us don't even see it as an addiction, but it is. It really, really, really is, right? And it's a distraction. So that's another thing that addiction does. It distracts us from our truth. And so I'm going to try and speak a little bit, or I am going to speak a little bit like from my own personal dealings with addiction. Okay, so probably like the one that I can probably speak most strongly about is between the ages of 17 to 21, I was bulimic, right? And I used to throw up like 3 times a day. I would eat a lot of food and purge, right, 3 times a day for years. I lost a lot of weight. I became very, very skinny because I was trying to get my body to be a size that it's not meant to be, right? I wanted to have a flat stomach, right? And that my body is not that shape. I'm very like round and stuff. And I started to dance professionally in clubs. And I was trying to get my body into this shape because external factors tell me that I need to be this shape. So I developed an addiction to food and then purging, right? Which then I transcended that form of addiction, but then it turned into smoking like 10, 15, and eventually 20 cigarettes a day. And also, for a couple of years, I had an addiction to what was called herbal highs at the time. I don't know if that's still a thing, but around early 2000s, you could get these herbal highs in shops, and it was like basically capsules that
Plant
like
food, they called it, didn't
replicate,
they?
yeah, like replicated like recreational drugs. Okay, so they were legal and you could go in and buy them, right? So I used to take them like a lot, pretty much every day, to keep my body in that same shape, right? So that I wouldn't be hungry and I wouldn't eat. And then also, I was smoking as well so that I wouldn't purge after the food. And so, I had a smoking addiction for years, up until I was like 27. And then when I stopped smoking, my body did start to naturally like put the weight back on. And I had to like, really come to a deeper level of acceptance with my body. And I'll be honest with you, it's probably something that I'm still working on, right? So it is about your self-love, right? That's what it comes down to, because I was seeking this external thing to keep my body in a certain shape, to keep it in a certain way, but my body's not meant to be like that. That's not my healthiest shape, right? So it was like the outside was defining who I was. And also on some level, of course, like smoking is highly addictive. We know that like nicotine gives us, I think initially when you start doing it, from what I can remember, because I don't smoke anymore, it kind of does give you like a bit of a rush. But then as you smoke, it's like you are then wired to need that substance to feel okay, to feel calm in yourself. But addiction takes, it doesn't give you anything. It takes and it takes and it takes, and eventually you become more and more addicted, okay, to the situation or the thing, right, that you are addicted to. And there is, there was the negative thought cycles that were going on around this situation that I was addicted to. So I feel like I've said a lot there. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jen.
So much to add, honestly. There's so much beautiful information that came out there. So I can't believe you brought up the phone thing. Honestly, when you said it, I was like, you're so right. Honestly, like I didn't even think about that one. And like if I'm honest, if my business wasn't on my phone, I could quite happily, when people like, could you
Yeah.
survive for a month on a desert island without your phone? I'm like, yeah, easily. Like, I just quite happily be away from it, because I think sometimes it just gets too much, doesn't it? But yeah, totally. People, especially now in the whole TikTok era, and young kids and being on it, and they are designed to keep you on it because it's that dopamine scroll. And if you've got like a crap post in front of you, it's like, but the next one's going to be better, but the next one's going to be better. So the
Right.
scroll is designed to keep you kind of going, whereas if you had to say go and open another tab or open another tab, it's not as satisfying. And again, though, with the notifications, and what people do is they get addicted, they live for likes. So again, what you were saying, it's that external validation of, okay, here's what I've posted. Is this good enough? Is this liked? Do people like it? How is the world receiving what I've put? And again, though, people just spiral down into negativity if it's not gained the traction that they believed it would have. And again, though, this then it's like, right, well, okay, I must do a better post. And this is where we're starting to see a lot of mental health issues, really, with young kids, and obviously school age ones, because obviously in our era we didn't have all the TikTok and the social media, so we just had to deal with like layer one of friendships, which were right in front of us. But kids nowadays are having to deal with like layer 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is like all these people on social media that can come at them of 50 shades of grey, giving them so much shit from all these different angles, and liking and hating and commenting. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that one. So that is and a really good one that you brought up, because it is, though, isn't it? It's like just one more scroll, and it's the wired in with that dopamine again. So it is your body wanting it. So just touching on what you said there, you spoke about your addiction and with the smoking, and you said, you were wired you get wired into receiving obviously the nicotine. So my
Mhm.
question is then, if we are stating that the brain gets used to being wired into the nicotine, then the question is, then can we rewire the brain to work against or to work out of addiction? And I understand in most cases, I'm not going to get into, obviously the effects of opioids and heroin and things like that, because there's a difference between a psychological addiction and a physiological addiction. So a physiological addiction is where obviously you are going to withdraw from it. So obviously this is
Mm.
where you see people shaking, cold turkey, things like that from obviously opioids and things like that. But weed is said to be a physiological addiction where it's kind of, the body doesn't physically need it. It's kind of all in your head. And I think that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, pardon the pun. Like when, for someone that has, been involved in all that back in like the uni days and things like that. And, you do kind of seek the reward of it in a way that just to experience that escapism and just to let go of everything. So yeah, to hear that that one is not a physiological addiction. But yeah, I suppose they can all be dealt with in sort of similar kind of ways. It's number one, addressing the fact that you are experiencing what you're experiencing, why you are experiencing it. So what are you trying to escape? There's something outside yourself that you are trying to seek that you feel that you cannot get from with inside yourself. So obviously within your case with your bulimia, that was self-love. So you felt like you were going to love yourself more by getting your body to a place where you felt society would accept you more. When really, but again though, that was based on your programming. Yeah. So society presented you with, all these Calvin Klein billboards, which are not the case nowadays. If you've seen the new
No.
Calvin Klein ads, like, the body technique has gone out now, but you were looking at svelte women like this. So when you're looking at these magazines, it's like, right, I need to be like that. I need to be like
Yeah.
that. So then that has then sent you've seen the program and it's like, right, because I am not like that, therefore I'm not pretty, I am not beautiful, I am not where I need to be in society. And this is what happens. We get programmed and I feel like that's can with some aspects of it, that's where addiction can go to. Like at the moment as well, I would say one of the biggest addictions in society at the moment is I'm going to put it under self-improvement, but obviously with aesthetics at the moment, people get addicted to that because
Yeah.
you look at all these adverts of these women having makeup done and they have got the most smoothest skin, they've got the biggest lips, they've got the most, like perfect faces. But most of the time, though, these are filters that are applied. But when these young women of today's society are looking at this and they are seeing themselves separate from this picture, which is fake, they are then trying to recreate this on their face. And it is a case of once you pop, you just can't stop because they have a little bit done. And then when, like when you get lips done, it goes down, doesn't it? It's like a balloon. It like pumps up and then goes down, and then they want bigger, better, bigger, better. And it's again, though, it's that body tying into that. They're not happy with inwards, they're happy outwards. So they're wanting to match what they see in front of them. So I suppose where I look at it within my business and how I speak with people about things, and again, I've covered this, I'm not an addiction coach, but people are addicted to their negative thoughts because it is a repeat pattern in their head. And I suppose what I have to do, if I'm going to speak about this from my point, is I have to sever their tie to their addictive mindset because the brain will just keep doing what it wants to do unless we instruct it otherwise. So I suppose my take on addiction is severing people's tie with their addictive mindsets. And again, that can be with obviously your self-love aspect, it can be with your inner critic. And sometimes we get into this cycle, this whole love hate cycle, and our body it gets addicted to the chemicals. When we generate a thought, we generate an emotion, as we've said this previously, and our body can get addicted to the chemicals of this emotion. So when the body is addicted to the chemicals of this emotion, then the body seeks further down the line to cause and create other instances where we will have the ability and possibility to recreate that to get those chemicals again. And this is where you see with people, you know, that are in relationships where they have this love hate thing, where one minute, you know, they're absolutely hating each other and they're like throwing pots at each other. And then the next minute,
Yeah.
they're having the best makeup sex in the world and they've got this love. And they're going from the polarity of hate, 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 but then the rebound back that they get with the love, that's what the body is addicted to. And that is why they stay in these damaging relationships, because the body is like, but I love him and I love this. Like, it's a rush, isn't it? You know, when they're like, when they make up with the partner, and the body is addicted to that. So again, this addiction doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, taking of a substance or, you know, gambling. It can be what the body is experiencing within you. So if you're turning around and you're like, no, I've never been addicted to anything in my life. Well, it's like, really take a moment to examine the thoughts, the patterns, and the behaviors that are going on in your life, and really question, like, you know, is your body secretly addicted to the chemicals that you are sending it? And we'll leave it on that one.
Yeah, wow, so much there, Jen. I love that breakdown and that description, you know, of what happens on a chemical level, because it is, and then I think another big one that I'm going to be honest, I see a lot, right, is people bitching and complaining. And you could say, yeah, well, you're bitching and complaining about people bitching and complaining right now, but I'm making a point,
I
right?
am stating an opinion on it.
So, but you know, especially in this country, right? And this is where we really have to watch this, watch our words. And I know that, you know, I've become a lot more aware of this in me, of like how, you know, how we talk about situations and how we talk about others, because as we've said many times, your thoughts and your words create your energy, and your energy creates your life. Okay, so uh, the thing is though, when we bitching with others, right, and I see it in the gym a lot, like in the local areas that I go to, and it's like, and you see them in the changing room, and it's like that tribe mentality, because it makes us feel safe to discuss a perceived threat, right? It's like tribe literally mentality. But in terms of manifestation, it it doesn't, that's not going to help you, right? But it's very addictive to come back to addiction. Okay, this talking about, complaining about, and bitching about others, because your body is wired, or has been wired until you change the programming, which you can do with Jen, right? Is like, it's wired to be addicted to that chemical that is then released, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because they're making them, by gossiping, they're kind of making themselves feel good because they're putting someone else down, whereas, you know,
Yes.
they're kind of like pedestalizing, is that a word? I'm going to use it anyway, putting themselves on a pedal and bringing someone down. So they're kind of giving themselves dopamine in a way, you know, by doing it. And again, like you've said, in that tribe mentality, so I call it like de-individuation, where you're in a group setting, and it's kind of like bit like minority influence as well, isn't it? You know, like you're sort of within the pack, so like what you're saying is agreeing with other people. So again, you've got that acceptance level. So there's loads of things going on there in what you're saying. But yeah, it's definitely, it is addictive, isn't it, with that? And it's, I've even done a post about this, about one of the things about giving up, you know, to in order to manifest a better life. And I think number 5 or 6 on it was gossiping. Because that is like, it is a mega low vibe one. And, you know, I
Yeah.
think girls are the most ruthless for this one. And that's why growing up, I used to always hang around with guys because I couldn't stand the bitchiness of females. And I think it is, again, it's that addictiveness, isn't it? Where most of
Mm.
the time, though, it's an insecurity within themselves. And what they do is they reflect it onto someone else, if that makes sense, to make themselves feel good. And in that process, by making themselves feel good, the dopamine hits the brain, they feel better about themselves. And then so it continues. So yeah, snip that one. Snip, 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 snip.
Yeah, so addiction, okay, the underlying feeling or energy, right? And I can speak for myself, I can speak for, the clients that I've worked with, my friends, a lot of them have been in recovery, they've gone through the recovery process. So the underlying thing with it is the feeling of worthlessness, right? And that whatever it is that they're addicted to, giving them that feeling of worthiness, right? So it's really looking at, where do I feel unworthy? So for me, when I went from the eating disorder to the herbal highs and the cigarettes, I wasn't feeling worthy because my body wasn't good enough to be a dancer, right? To be a professional dancer. And I was comparing myself to like my friends who had the ideal physique, right? So, and everyone that I seem to speak to around this, it's an underlying feeling of unworthiness.
So that in
Okay.
itself is a limiting belief, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's the programming. Okay. So to come to the so the request was, how do the angels support us with addiction? How can the angels help us? So in the work that I do, okay, I help people to access their angels and guides, to communicate with them for the purpose of healing and manifestation through light language. Okay. And what light language does is it drops you more into your heart, it opens your channeling abilities. What this does is it gives you that feeling of love. Okay. It gives you that feeling of coming home to yourself, right? And it gives you that feeling of connectedness. And all of these things lead to a feeling or a sensation of worthiness in the body. Because when we feel like we're at home and we feel like we're loved, right? It's giving you that feeling, okay? And everything that we do in life is for a feeling. Okay. So the angels are the bridge between ourselves and God or source and the divine. Now, if you want to work directly with God or with source, that's perfect. You go ahead and do that if that's your journey. Me personally, I grew up in a religious, you could call it a very strict religion, a religious cult, okay? And I know a lot of people do struggle with their connection with God or with source. So the angels are like basically the messengers of source, and they help to bridge that gap by making God or source more relatable. Okay. So they are like the communication between ourselves and the divine, right? And so if you did want to work with the angels with addiction, I would say the best archangel to work with is Archangel Raphael, who is the angel of healing, and interestingly, also the archangel of working with your heart, right? Because the more that we work with our heart, the more that we open our hearts, we're getting out of the head, we're getting out of the mind, right? And we are in that space of love. We're breaking the negative cycles, we're breaking the negative patterns. And as we work with our feelings and our emotions, that naturally feeds into the mind as well, because it's all connected. And so you would start to invite Archangel Raphael into your life and ask Archangel Raphael to help and support you with your healing process as you transcend addiction. And what I'm saying here, it's not about spiritual bypassing anything, because we still need to do the reprogramming. We still need to do the rewiring. And that's what we talk about all the time on this podcast, because it's all one, it's all helpful. And if you're going through some sort of addictive process where, there's going to be some type of withdrawal, then definitely seek out a recovery coach, you know, go to, and I don't know what, this person's journey is, but like, again, I'm going to speak from my friend's perspective and from clients I've worked with. There's many different forms of addiction, and there's many, many, many different spaces now that you can go to receive that professional help. But I know with myself how I bring more love into my life is through working with the angels, through connecting with them more. Because as I do that, I feel more love, I feel more acceptance. And there's something with it as well, where I know that I went through this journey, right, with the bulimia and all that, because I can speak to people, and I have had clients that have come to me and they've not even come to me for that. And as we've gone deeper with it, they've actually moving through that process right now. So we go through everything, right, to, I believe, to help ourselves, but also to help others in the collective. So when you look at it like that, you're not looking at it from your limited point of view of, and I'm not saying this is anyone watching, but from my own personal experience, from a victim consciousness of, why is this happening to me? Why can't I transcend this? Why is this so difficult? Right. But when you step outside of yourself, you start working with your higher self, you start working with the angels and guides, you see that it's not just about you, it's about the collective. And everything that you move through is for you ultimately to be able to help and support other people in the way that we're giving our perspectives right now.
Amen. Amen, sister. I have a question. So obviously I would say source can be called with different names. Obviously, people would call it God. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it has to be religious to call it God, it's just creator. So God, source, creator, divine source. So then when you're speaking of the angels, how they are between God and source,
Yeah.
could you then, if someone is averse to the whole, I don't want to call it God, I don't want to call it angels, are spirit guides angels? Are just a different way of saying it.
So, okay. So the angelics, okay, it's kind of a different frequency to the spirit guides. So the spirit guides, a lot of the time, can and have been incarnated in different, on this planet, okay, and have had different lives and incarnations, where the angelics do not have free will, and they are like kind of aspects that are a little bit, I would say, higher up than the guides. And it
Mm-hmm.
depends what frequency the guide is on. But I literally see the angels as the messengers of source. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when we talk about guides, we're talking about like the galactics, we're talking about the ancestors. There's many, many different levels and sort of layers to the various different beings. So the person that's asked this question, you can work with your guides as well. It really is whatever works for you. Like I really resonate with the angelics, and when I'm channeling light language, that's who it is that I'm working with, right? Because I feel like for me, they drop me into my heart and they bring through so much healing. But it's whoever and whatever you want to work with, as long as it's bringing you healing and it's in the highest divine good of all involved, right? Because we're only working with light beings. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just felt like I wanted to ask that for the collective as well, because I feel like some people have just got, the fact that God belongs to the church and angels belongs to the church, but it's not necessarily
Oh
the case.
no.
It's just a case of these are different words for what we are calling source and the divine. So,
Yeah.
God exists within, if you imagine that God is a creator, everything, and we are on this earth, everything is God, but in just mirrored back to us in a different way.
Mm,
The animals, the plants, us, you, me, them, everything is creation, isn't it? We are all
yeah.
come from one thing, split down into many, 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 many different particles. So we are part of it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yes.
So I just
Yeah.
wanted to get that. across so that people are like, yeah, well, I'm not religious, so therefore I don't work with the angels and I don't work with God. It's like these are just different terms of what we're saying. You can work with them. So yes, I agree on that one. But yeah, what an eye-opening one for this one then, isn't it really?
Yeah. So do you feel like that's complete? Is there anything else that like you want to add to this?
No, I feel like again, it's coming across as, we're not medical experts. We're only speaking from our own experiences and obviously
Mm.
what we help people with coaching. And like how we've said before, if you examine your behaviors and what you're doing in life, every single one of us has got an addiction to something,
Yeah.
and it's about sometimes recognizing that, and then yeah, just being able to maybe break the pattern of it. And whereas with some of them, they are going to be more heavily invested on a physiological way, which is obviously maybe like as Amy said, you're going to have to seek help. But it's a case of breaking the patterns, understanding why this addiction has occurred in your life or why you are seeking satisfaction and love from an outside source rather than within yourself. And again, this might stem back to childhood, that there might be a void that you are trying to fill from previous on. So again, it's just about doing the work, and we've said about this in previous podcasts. Again, it's sometimes you've got to go back to scratch and really kind of, right, what has happened in my life, a big life event, a traumatic life event, a large life event that has put your body into into survival mode, a state of fight or flight, that has then maybe made a void within yourself that later on in life you are seeking to fill this. And at first, it would have probably started on a subconscious way. It might just have been a case of like, getting stoned with your mates behind the bike shed or whatever it was. But then it's kind of like the feeling that you are feeling, just like that escapism, that's then becomes the addiction. So, yeah, everything can be kind of traced back. And it's about doing the shadow work in these instances. So, yeah, I feel like that is a good place to end this one. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't have anything else I want to add right now. I feel like that's it. Oh yeah, I have one thing. Right. So healing happens as we've talked about previously, right? On the spiritual, mental, physical, and the emotional, right? It happens on all levels, right? So it's really important to recognize that. So when you're moving through an addiction, you want to look at those four things, what's happening on all of those levels, to like fully shift through it. And I always look at everything from like, what am I learning from this? Yeah. How is this serving me? What is the opportunity and the gift in this? So if you ask yourself those three questions, you're going to approach it from a state of compassion and empathy within yourself.
Curiosity.
Yeah, that will help you to transcend this, right? And it takes time. These things take time, right? It's not an overnight thing, because we can get really hard on ourselves about, well, why haven't I given it up yet? Why can't, do you know what I mean? And that's the point when you want to bring love and understanding and compassion and empathy to this and to yourself. And that is what I believe that the angels bring to this situation.
Feel like that is a good one to leave it on. So yeah, so thank you for the person that commented and said, can we speak about this today? I hope that this has answered all your questions. So obviously, if you do resonate with our podcast, please like and subscribe. And if there is anything that you want us to cover, like we've said, we come at things from a spiritual point of view. So if there's any topic that you want us to cover, please just put it in the comments, and yeah, we'll create a podcast on it. So, with that said, then we shall see you on the next episode.
Love you lots. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And thank you for watching. And we will see you soon.
Bye.